Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here at the Julie Chan Show, where passion meets purpose. Today's show, we have the lovely Leslie, Jody, and Lori, who are all book authors, all living through midlife as a woman. We are talking today about women's empowerment, the journey of being a woman and finding ourselves through life's ups and downs. Leslie, Jody, Lori, so good to be with you ladies today.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so much for having us, Julie.
We're thrilled to
Thank
be
you,
here.
Julie. This is great.
What I especially love about having the three of you here is that you are all book authors, but in very different genres, covering the same topic, which is midlife, women's empowerment, finding our way, finding ourselves. Lori wrote a memoir, Sandwiched. Jody's book is a compilation of a bunch of women's first date stories. And
Right.
and we just lost Leslie.
Oh
no.
Leslie.
Leslie will be right back. There she is. Let's see what happened there.
Thank you.
Hello, you dropped off. That's what happens with social media sometimes. And Leslie's book is a fiction book, After Happily Ever After. Ladies, let's start by, Jody, could you share with us your experience of going through life? You graduated college, you began dating early, and you kept dating for a long time before finding the one. Talk about all the first dates and why you decided to write a book about it.
All the first dates, Julie, we would be here for a very long time. I understand. So yes, I dated longer than most. I was in the dating scene for 26 years after college. I came from a family and upbringing where you work very hard, of people with small business. And I worked very hard after college. I got my MBA. I went into the high-tech world. I put my career first. And social was important to me, certainly. I dated a good deal. I had meaningful relationships, but none of them were worthy of going the distance. And really, work was the priority until I realized in my later 30s, early 40s that, wait a second, things have really changed. Dating has changed. And the world around, the people around me have changed because there's not as many women dating at that stage of life. And it was much more disconnected and not as supportive as in my 20s and early 30s. But I kept at it. And I ultimately, after going on many first dates, showed up at an event and met my husband when I was 47. And we were married, we were engaged 10 months later and married when I was 49. And I felt that things should be better for women at that stage. And there's so much that women have to offer. And yet it's easier to find a man than another woman often who is single at that stage. So I wanted to write a collection of stories that highlighted women's journeys and really the start of their journeys. And so that is what brought me to write the book.
It must have been interesting for you to go through your 20s, single and dating and having a lot of friends by your side, a lot of girlfriends, sharing similar first date experiences. How was the journey when a lot of your friends started to get married and finding their one, and you still being in the dating world? And then full circle, you probably then started to see some of them go through divorce and be back in the dating scene with you. Talk about what that was like to be you through those years.
Right. Well, there's a lot there. There's a lot to potentially unpack there. I was always happy for my friends. So it was always joyous. But then there's always the question at some level, wow, it worked for them. When is it going to happen for me? And the belief that, yes, I am worthy of love and I am worthy of giving, and someone out there is worthy of receiving my love. But if I did not find that person, I was going to be fine because I was whole as myself. and and every woman is whole as herself and need not be coupled. But I just thought that it was worth continuing on and believing it was going to happen. And so, as far as people coming back into the dating scene, I actually turned out to be a great resource for them because I understood like dating changes so much in this era, right? I mean, all the apps and everything, it's just such a different world than when we were in our 20s. And I was there kind of as a guide to help them along in this next stage. And I have a funny story, if I might just briefly share, in
Sure.
that when I was 45, I went to a wedding. A girlfriend got married and she was 46. And I walked over to a friend of hers who had flown all the way around, all the way to the other side of the country for this wedding. And I said to her, wow, you came all across the US from New York to the Bay Area to be at this wedding. I'm really impressed. She says, well, of course I did. Who gets married for the first time at 46? And I thought to myself, well, not me.
Wow.
Because it was a woman. She's a professional. It's just out of her range of thinking. And why, Julie, why is it that women are thought not to be in the right place if you're not coupled by by a certain age?
Right.
It's an old thinking that we need to overcome as a society.
Right. And also not to be in a rush, right? Not to set these timelines on ourselves, which I think younger generations are not doing so much anymore. But we're still of that generation that you have to by a certain age or else and what, right?
Exactly.
Amazing that you, Jody, really followed your heart and waited for the right person as opposed to being in a rush and making sacrifices or, choosing and then realizing, wait, this isn't what I wanted.
Well, it wasn't always easy, there were those temptations and the like, but I just wanted to do it once, really. And I thought that time is too precious.
Yeah.
And I also came to understand that we should not be judged by who we are with. We don't need someone to be with us to make us feel whole. And that's kind of what society is, our upbringing in our era, Gen Xers had us thinking, is that we need to be with someone, and having someone by our side validates us.
Yeah.
And that's wrong.
Right.
And so, it's
absolutely
that we have now. It's empowered. We are more empowered now to understand this and go forward on our journeys.
Jody, love your book and love that you share so many dating experiences. Oh my gosh. I mean, there can be a lot of crazy experiences out there. Jody, we will bring you back in just a minute to have a roundtable discussion with Lori and Leslie, and just stay with us.
I shall.
Leslie, so good to be with you. Happily
You're
ever
muted.
after.
I can't hear you.
Oh. Can you hear me now?
I heard you a second ago when you were talking before. No, you're gone.
Okay, not sure what is going on there.
I don't know why.
Let me take you down for a second. And Lori, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Leslie, I am not sure what is going on. But Lori, so good to be with you.
So nice to be with you too, Julie.
Sandwiched.
Yes.
Well, in midlife, we definitely might feel sandwiched, many of us.
Yes.
I love the title of your book, The Two Hands, because we are right in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Kids, aging parents, going through whatever we are in our marriage, what the second half holds for us. Talk about what really pushed you to write this memoir and share your own life experience.
So it actually started out when my mom first fell ill, and when she first came home from the hospital, she needed care. So that started the caregiver process. Over the first probably 4 or 5 years, I went through a lot of caregivers. And so I would come home to my girlfriends and lament and talk to my then husband about all the caregiver issues I was having. And, we would laugh. Sometimes I would cry because like I couldn't make some of this stuff up. I mean, I had caregivers that were stealing from us, drinking on the job. I had one that emotionally seduced my dad. And another one that I called the angel of death, who basically played God with my mom and told me that it was my time for my mom to die. And it's like, my mom can't talk. She had dementia at that point, and she had lost her verbal skills. So anyway, so that was the beginning. And so everybody kept saying, you have to write this stuff down. You can't make this stuff up. I'm like, I don't have time to write this stuff down. Like, I'm barely holding it all together. 4 kids, my marriage, my parents who live an hour away, trying to just keep everything afloat. And so fast forward a couple years, I was at a yoga retreat. I was with a fellow writer, and she said, you have time right now. Just go and do some writing. So I did. And that was the beginning. And so I often say that my story found me during a very tumultuous time. And it really ended up becoming part of my healing process through those very difficult years and through transitioning out of a marriage, a 26-year marriage.
Wow. So you were at a yoga retreat, you start writing, but then you come home to taking care of your parents and your then husband and your 4 daughters. So how did you continue to find time to write?
I made time. My kids were getting a little bit older by then. My older 2 were off to college. My twins, that are my youngest, just had started high school. And at that point, I started taking classes at UCLA Extension. I took a couple memoir writing courses that they offer there, then found a really wonderful program out of the Bay Area and continued on with them. So I basically taught myself how to write memoir. And again, I didn't realize it, but the writing process was definitely one of my healing, the pieces that really helped me heal some of my past.
Yes.
And really empowered me to continue on to publish this book, and then also become a coach, a transformative life coach, and help other people who might find themselves in midlife struggling and trying to figure out, what their next chapter might look like. No pun intended.
Well, and they say that writing a book is very healing, right? It gives you, it's like meditation. It gives you time to listen to your own soul. And I'm sure you started to write things down that you didn't expect were even there within you.
Very much so. Yes. Yes. It's a very cathartic process. And there are a lot of programs out there, therapeutic programs that involve writing. So it is very much a research-based therapeutic modality.
How long did your memoir take from start to finish?
It took 5 years. So from the time I went to that yoga retreat to the definitely within the same month. From the time I went to that yoga retreat, because it was always a fall yoga retreat, and 5 years later, I turned my manuscript in. And yes. So
in those 5 years, I'm sure a lot happened. What was the biggest lesson, life lesson, being a woman, raising 4 children, handling your parents, deciding where you were in your marriage? What did the book help you realize about your life that pushed you to do something you weren't expecting?
I had to let go of the life that I had planned in order for the life that I was meant to have to show up and to come in. Sometimes we plan and, we have this idea in our teens and 20s of, well, I want to be married by a certain date, and I want, kids by a certain time. And then that way they're out of the house at a certain point, and then I can live happily ever after with my husband. As we all know, anybody who's in there, that's not life, right? Life's what happens while you're busy planning.
Right. Exactly.
So, and it's learning to to listen to the nudges, the signs. Sometimes it requires an emotional 2x4 to hit you in the head, but listen to those signs that come up and be flexible and pivot, because sometimes when you do, and you let go of something that's not working any longer, I mean, it's allowed so much beauty and, beautiful relationships, me just being able to be true to myself of
Right.
who I was,
Right.
instead of trying to be who everybody else wanted me to be during those times.
Exactly.
Caregiver, mother, wife.
Yep. Yeah. Letting all the hats go, being
Yeah.
unattached, and letting life happen, and remembering your own goals, your own
Yes.
dreams, or
Yeah.
even hearing them for the first time, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
in our teens, were they our own dreams?
Yeah. Figuring out what those are, because they change as we grow.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Lori, we will be right back with you. We're going to bring Leslie in now.
Thank you.
Leslie.
Hi. Okay.
Hi.
So thank God I have a second computer because I don't know what's going on with my laptop.
That is fine. I'm so glad we can hear each other now.
Yay. I know. I couldn't hear you before.
Leslie, your book about a middle-aged woman going through figuring out how to empower herself is a fiction novel. Tell us, though, what it was in your personal life that pushed you to write this fiction novel.
Well, I had hit an age where a lot of my friends were at that point where their kids were getting older and they were saying, like, I don't know what to do with myself. And I was I had written for television a long time ago, and then I gave it up to have my kids. And when I tried to get back in, it was really hard. And I knew the business had changed. So I went back, I got a master's degree, I went into nutrition. So I was working as a nutritionist, but I was still, it wasn't my passion. And so I was sort of in that place with all my friends who all said, I have this passion and I can't do it, and they were all sort of putting themselves on hold.
Right.
So I decided that I would write a book with all these women's issues. And also we were at that age where our parents were getting older.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had aging parents, we had kids that were starting to get older, and we were sort of like in the middle. And I also had older parents. I had a father with health issues, not the same health issues as the father in the book, but he had health issues. So I kind of totally got this sandwich generation, which is what Lori wrote about too.
Exactly.
And women in midlife, I knew people that were walking away from their marriages in midlife. They were like, you know what? I want something else. And so I sort of took a lot of stories that I was hearing and thought, you know what? This could be a book that's relatable to a lot of women. And there aren't a lot of protagonists out there that are in their 40s. And Maggie, my protagonist, is in her 40s. She's not thrilled with getting older. And she's got, a daughter going to go off to college. So she's got the empty nest thing. She's got the long-term marriage thing. And she has the aging parents thing. So I just thought it was really relatable.
Absolutely. And so common. And we just need to hear from other women that we aren't the only ones going through it. Obviously, we aren't, but it's easy to forget that. And we feel alone. Sometimes we feel like the victim. Sometimes we feel a lot of guilt, right? Like
Yes.
women harbor so much guilt.
Yes.
And it's like guilt that we're not doing enough for our kids, for our parents, for our marriage. Why is this falling apart? What did we do? It must be all of our fault.
And if we're home with our kids, we feel guilt for that too, because we're like, well, I'm not adding money to the house, but I am doing so much. Yep. And, there's so many people out there that say to you like, well, what could you possibly be doing all day? Yeah. And you really are the CEO. You're taking care of everybody, but really not yourself. In a lot of ways, you put everybody first and you're last on the list just because you don't have time to do it all.
Right. Absolutely. And so I love that you chose, different from the other two authors here, you chose to write your book from a place of fiction So I think that that gives you leeway, right? For it to be anybody's story, for bits and pieces to be your own journey, but not necessarily all out there for people to dissect who you, Leslie, are and what happened in your personal life.
Exactly. Nothing is autobiographical in it. The only thing that's even remotely from my life is that the father has health issues and he and the daughter have this amazing relationship, which I had with my dad. And unfortunately, he passed away before the book was completely finished, and he would have loved it, and I dedicated it to him.
Yes,
But
I love that dedication.
I know, thanks. There's tiny little things in the book that are from my childhood, but they're all the fun stuff. They're not like any of the major stuff.
Well, and even if it were the major stuff, we wouldn't know.
True, that's true. But like, for example, my mom would always make these things I hated more than anything, which were salmon patties. And that was like, it's a popular thing with Jewish people back then. And I just hated them so much. So I would take a bite and spit it out and feed it to my dog.
Okay, so that is really funny that you bring that up, because I had a friend staying with me from New York for the past 2.5 weeks, and she made salmon patties, and I absolutely loved them.
Wait. Well, were they fresh or from a can?
These were from a can.
Oh, they were? And you loved them? Oh my gosh. So my mom, when she read my book, she was like laughing hysterically because she has always known that I don't eat salmon. It's the only fish I won't eat, because she's like giving me PTSD.
I love salmon.
I know, but everybody does.
So you don't love it, right? It's the only fish you won't eat because you grew up eating it from a can.
Yes, exactly.
Got
and
it.
so now it's like I've tasted it and gone, oh yeah, it's okay, but it brings back such horrible memories.
Well, we'll have to take you somewhere to get some really good salmon, because you and I are both in LA.
Yes,
So-
exactly. We are.
We are going to bring everyone back up. I think between the four of us, there are so many topics that we can cover. But the one that I'd like to touch on first is that idea of women ourselves leaving our passion, our career, what we love, to go and create the other ideal that it sounds like many of us had growing up, which was get married, have kids, be a good mom, and then take care of your parents, right? So now that we are all the age that we're at, what is something that you wish you had known? You wish an angel had told you in your 20s? Seems like Jody may have had this down the most. So let's start with you.
I wish, okay, I'll answer that. Because I thought about this because I had time all those years. I wish that an angel had told me not to compare my life's journey with other people's life's journey. It's mine. I shouldn't worry about theirs. And let the Joneses be the Joneses, and let me do me. And be
And so hard.
as me. Yes?
And that can be so difficult.
Yes.
I mean, I think we constantly tell ourselves that, right? Like, stop comparing, stay in your own vision, dreams, hopes, who you are.
Exactly.
What have you found over the years to be the most supportive way for you to do that?
The most supportive way for me to do that is to have people in my life, good people, nice, kind, caring friends who will believe in my goodness that I bring to them, and that they help me, and they will support me to say, hey, what you're doing is A-okay. What you are doing is all right. And you're not the other, and it doesn't matter if you are the other, because you are you, and that's all that matters. So I think so much of it in life is about communal support. And that's what I saw missing for women dating in midlife. So much that was absent was communal support. And I think that led to a lot of people who I saw and I've talked to since dropping out, and a lot of women not returning because they didn't see other people or know other people who were in that same place. So they lacked that communal support. And it's a shame, and it's a void that needs to be filled.
Well, and not only did they lack the communal support, but maybe they felt very judged.
They did, and they felt shame, Julie. They felt shame.
Yeah.
Multiple professional women, very accomplished, who came out of marriages they did not expect to come out of, or long-term relationships they did not expect to come out of, didn't want to go back into the dating world because they might be seen on an app. And somebody they know might see them, and then they would be thought of in a way they didn't want to be thought of. That's how they were processing it. And they were denying themselves moving forward because of this perception that they had, this vision of themselves and this brand of themselves they were putting out in the world, that doing this act of being on a dating app would somehow mitigate and taint. And that really isn't true.
Right. And Lori, what have you found as becoming a coach for women and really supporting them through your business?
So happiness comes from within. So often we think if we build this or we create this family, this life, this career, whatever it is, that's going to provide us happiness, and that we have to do that inner work, whether it's working with a coach, working with a therapist, healing past trauma. If you have some from your childhood, those keys are so important. And touching on what Jody said earlier, is because we are all whole. We are born whole. Sometimes our trauma and our experience cause us to feel less whole and less complete. But once we have done that and know our self-worth, then we can build from the inside out. Then we can create the life that is going to be right for us. Finding the right career, finding the right man, surrounding yourself with the right friend group. Then that's when you create the life that you were meant to have.
And to your point about being whole, I think I see in all three of your books, it's so easy to not feel whole, right?
Oh, yeah.
To look for a man or to, come together in a relationship because it fills that hole that you haven't figured out on your own, that you haven't gone through, right? Whether it be through therapy or meditation or journaling or whatever sets you free.
Yeah.
So Leslie, in writing your fiction book and in bringing in all these life stories of your own and others around you, what did you come to find out about creating wholeness if you're not already?
Well, for me, I found out that, in fact, talking about what Jody just said, I love the idea that comparison is the thief of joy. And I know that when I gave up my writing career at the beginning, when I was doing television, it was hard for me. It was really hard for me, but I did want to be with my kids. But I would say personally, I think what's really important, and when you talked about before what you tell your 20-year-old self, I think I would say, keep doing your passion. It's okay, to do whatever else you're doing, but don't stop, and don't think that means it's over. And in midlife, it's still, I've changed careers 3 times. I'm now an author. And I think it's really important to say, I'm able to do this for myself, and nobody can tell me that I can't. And I could just keep on doing what I love, even if it's not as a career at that moment, because I was taking care of my kids. And also not to feel the comparison to other people. These people that my kids would be in school with, and their parents would have these very high powered jobs, and their moms would be just like dressed to the nines and coming to school. And, it's hard not to be intimidated by that sometimes. And when people say, well, what are you doing? And it's like, well, I'm raising my kids right now. Yeah. And that's not seen as the best thing in the world. Sometimes by society, it's seen as, oh, that's what you're doing. Not as, that's really an important thing that you're doing for this time. Yeah. So that's really what I would tell myself, is just not to compare and to just enjoy the journey, because your kids grow up so fast, and all of a sudden they're independent, and you're then in the middle of your life going, hey, now what?
And then you have all this time on your hands, right?
Yes. And that's why at the end, when I was a nutritionist, I closed my business and just wrote, because that's what made me happy.
Mhm.
Right. And it for women, I think, about this whole idea of our empowerment, it's finding ourselves again, hearing our own souls, where when you have spent so many years, right, doing the household and being the CEO of everyone else and managing this house, that it's very easy to not have time and not hear your own soul. And then when it's quiet, it can also create a lot of anxiety of, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? What do I want? And that question of what do I want can create anxiety in itself.
It does. And I actually worked with a life coach at the time to try to figure out, and I kept coming back to the writing. I just kept doing that. And she said, but you're not getting back to television. I said, I know, but I keep coming back to the writing. And that's why I'm saying, I think you find passion and you do live it.
Right. And going back to Leslie's point, it's really about listening to that, your intuition, that inner compass, and what keeps showing up, right? The writing kept showing up for her. The writing kept showing up for me. Jody, I believe too, the writing kept showing up for all of us. That doesn't mean it's right for everybody that might be listening, but that's what was right for us. And then that will carry us somewhere else. Right. But it's really listening to those little signs, those little nudges. Sometimes we have to wait for them to get a little bit bigger, but it's listening to what keeps showing up in our lives.
And Lori, I also love that you are very active in the nonprofit world and helping high school students to realize what their passion is and following that. What is something that you have learned from working with high school students? Because I always wonder, gosh, if I had had a coach like any one of you ladies when I was in high school, where would I be? How would my path have been different? Yeah. So I found it really fascinating that that's what you do. And I'm sure that that is just so empowering in itself to be working with young people to show them a different way.
It's very rewarding. And I think the best advice that we try and instill in these kids is something that we've talked about here, is that you don't have to figure out what you want to do right now. You're in high school. Explore, learn, and see where your strengths are and see what lights you up. What are you passionate about, right? What are you passionate about? Then follow that path and see what comes up and see what careers are in that. But don't tie yourself to that. We all often bring these professionals in to speak, our speakers, and the point is there's a lot of zigzagging. There's a lot, we have all changed careers. I was a recruiter, then I stayed home. Now I'm an author and life coach. I mean, Leslie too, Jody as well. And that is okay, especially as, we're living longer, and it's no longer the 50s, 60s where, like our parents, mine, I don't know about yours, they got a job and they stuck with it until they retired. Yeah. Those days are gone.
Absolutely gone.
That's okay. And it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be afraid. Just take small steps.
It's okay not to have the answers. Yeah. But kids today have to know all the answers, right? They have to be doing and having the answers and knowing what they want. Otherwise, they are jobs.
They definitely.
I mean, I tell my kids, sometimes I joke with them and say, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. So, and it's also instilling, like, what joy did you have as a child? Like, and having that childlike curiosity. That's okay as an adult to have that.
And Jody could be teaching them about when you have butterflies and when you find the love of your life. How do you know, right?
How do you know? Yes. It's not necessarily because you have a list that's 6 pages long and the person checks all the boxes. It's really because you have figured out who you are. And you have fallen in love with the most important person in your life, which happens to be yourself. Yes. Because not from a narcissistic manner and not from that angle, but just knowing who you are, accepting who you are, loving who you are, so you can show up as yourself to meet that person and be with that person in an authentic way. So you really are presenting as the person that you will be long term, and the two of you are so complementary, and having those 5 or 6 things that are so important to you, and then getting that respect, that somebody who listens, somebody who loves kindness, and the list goes on. But yes, that's really the core. And it starts with loving yourself, and the self-worth that comes from that.
Yes.
So true.
Loving yourself, self-worth, knowing yourself, sitting with yourself, all ways that all women can empower ourselves.
Yes. So true.
Spending time with ourselves, giving ourselves space and time. Ladies, it was so lovely to be with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everyone, thank you for watching the Julie Chan Show, where passion meets purpose. We hope that you find your passion or already living it every day.